Bang, bang. What's going on, guys? Hope you guys are really excited about this interview. I really enjoyed it. I think you will as well. But before we get into that, make sure that you like this video so that more people on YouTube can find it. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. And don't forget that BlockFi is the sponsor today. They've got 3 products you can buy and sell crypto on their crypto exchange. You can deposit crypto and earn up to 8.6% APY in an interest-bearing account, or you can deposit crypto and take out a US dollar loan against your crypto collateral. You can use the description right here, or you can go to blockfi.com/pomp to learn more. All right, let's get into this episode. I hope you guys enjoy this one. All right, guys, bang, bang. I've got a special treat for you today. I have Jeff Morris here. Thank you so much for doing this, sir.
Just waking up, and this is the best way to start the day. So I'm excited to be here.
Most people don't say that to me, so I'll take it. Let's jump into your background. You're investing today, but you spent a good amount of time as an operator. Kind of walk us through, where'd you grow up? How'd you get into the technology industry, and what'd you do?
Sure. So I grew up 5 minutes from Palo Alto and 5 minutes from Sand Hill Road. So I was really kind of in the heart of technology and venture. Went to Menlo High School, kind of grew up around the scene. Ended up going to UCLA to study English. Thought I wanted to be something in film. I was screenwriting for a little bit. I worked at UTA, which is an agency. I used to read scripts for $50 in college for different producers in LA, and I really thought that was my track. And then when I went to the agency world, I just realized how shitty being in entertainment is. I literally, like, if you've watched Entourage, I've had like staplers thrown at me, like my life was threatened many times. It just wasn't a healthy environment. And so I left. I was going through a breakup with a girlfriend and just kind of like left LA in classic kind of road trip style, packed the car, moved back up to San Francisco. And then this was 2010, and there was so many great companies around. So, and I still had good connections, but I wasn't like going to just get a job. I wasn't going to walk through a door and get a job because I knew anybody. And so I just started applying to every company I could apply to. And it turns out I was really good at applying to unicorns. I applied to Uber to be their 15th employee. I applied to Airbnb to be their 50th employee. And I applied to Twitter to be like their 200th employee. And none of them would hire me. So I ended up going to South by Southwest in 2011. I was sleeping on someone's couch. I had no reason to be there, but I met a company called Zarly. And they were based in Kansas City at the time and Seattle. But I ended up just late night on Twitter. I saw the CEO post a job opening, and I was the first one to apply. I wrote a really kind of dramatic cover letter, and he got on the phone with me the next day and said he would hire me, but I had to move the next day to Kansas City. And so at that point, I was kind of beaten up by trying to apply to all these companies. And so I said, fuck it. And I moved to Kansas City, and that was really my entry point into tech. I had to literally move from LA to San Francisco to the middle of nowhere to get a job. And then from there was just kind of became known for building products. Towards the end of Zarly, I started releasing a bunch of products online, mostly on Product Hunt. And I had 3 products hit #1 within a couple months. And then suddenly I was like the product person on Twitter and tested out a few ideas. I thought I was going to try and be a CEO. So I tried to start a gas delivery business, which is really a dumb business to start. So don't start it if you're thinking about it. But we were driving, I had a Jeep Wrangler. So we would attach little oil tanks to the back of my car. And we were driving around filling up cars in Menlo Park. I also realized people like their gas in the morning and at night. So it's not a great time to be an operator. You have to wake up early and stay late. So I ended up leaving the gas industry, and luckily at that time I got a phone call from Tinder, and I had used Tinder. I was an online dater for several years. At that time, you wouldn't say that out loud because online dating was still kind of just a weird world and a weird thing to say you did. And so I ended up moving to LA. I was one of their early product members, joined in 2015. The team was about 55 people big, really amazing product market fit, but a very disorganized organization. We were just starting to monetize. So we were doing about $20 million in revenue. I think a lot of people misunderstood Tinder and subscription businesses and didn't realize what we'd become. But, kind of like right place, right time, and also just hard work. But I ended up leading all the revenue products at Tinder, kind of from 20 million to 1.4 billion in revenue. And it's very much SaaS revenue because it's 97% of our revenue subscriptions. And from there just became kind of like Twitter famous, which sounds weird to say. You probably understand it, Pomp, but people were really curious to learn about Tinder and how we were suddenly becoming a monster business. And so I was sharing a lot of those thoughts and just became kind of like a person in the tech world and have since gone on to do a lot of things and now kind of focus on investing.
Yeah. Let's go back to when you put 3 products to the top of Product Hunt. This is when Product Hunt, like everyone was paying attention and it was the only thing. I think now there's kind of a couple of competitors and maybe some of the attention is a little bit fragmented, but what were the products and kind of why do you think they hit number 1?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I think the biggest thing was they were really like very quick projects that I built, which enabled them to be a lot more timely. And so one of the products was a good example is Slack was blowing up. Everybody was joining these kind of consumer Slack groups. So Slack was really an enterprise tool. They did not want you to discover the fact that they had like AOL chat rooms. And so I released the kind of the biggest one that did really well was called Slack Chats. And so think of it as just being a directory of all the best Slack rooms for non-work topics. And it did really well. It was getting a ton of traffic. And then I got a letter from Slack asking me to cease and desist is what you call it, asking me to take it down. To which I kind of fought back because I was so happy. And, you know, to me, I thought I was doing them a service by giving them more traffic, but eventually took that one down and they sent me the funniest part of the story is they sent me a pair of Slack socks after I took it down, which was less than the price of the domain. I was like, all right, great. Now I have to wear your socks on my feet to remind myself of this this cease and desist letter I got. But that was one of them. And then another one was called Startup Adoption Agency. And so it was just this idea of everybody was launching products on Product Hunt and a lot of people would have been in the projects and you could adopt other people's startups. Which again was like really easy to do, just a little matchmaking product, and wasn't too difficult. And then the other one was called Request for Startups, and so it's taking Y Combinator every year releases kind of a list of startups they're looking to fund or themes that they're looking to fund, and so we would just go to all the VCs in Silicon Valley and ask them what startups they want to fund, and created just a kind of a marketplace of ideas where we try and connect entrepreneurs and VCs with projects they actually want to fund. But again, like there weren't like machine learning teams. They weren't like big projects. They were just things I was doing on the weekend. But as you know, if you just release a lot of things, whether it's content or no code projects, and they do well, people start to associate you with being a certain type of person. And for me, it was just being someone who can release products at a fast rate.
Yeah. What's so fascinating to me about this is you basically were practicing, like you were getting reps in, you were creating lots and lots of products and you were learning along the way what works, what doesn't work, you know, how to build, how to iterate. You were getting kind of really tight feedback loops. I'm assuming that you think that a lot of that practice was very helpful when it came to Tinder and some of the stuff you did later.
Totally. Yeah. It was more frustration because keep in mind, I was also trying to launch this gas business on the side, which was just an impossible logistical business to run. And I was like, I can't release this because I have to deal with literally like local regulations and governing bodies, but I can release this little cheap project on the weekends. And then when I got to Tinder, I didn't have engineers. All I had, they ended up giving me access to this platform where you could send push notifications. That was literally all I could do for 6 months was send push notifications. So I started having a lot of fun with that. And I started to kind of run product tests through push notifications. So, and I'll give you a couple examples. One was, we had this tool where I could draw a map around any location. So I would spend my nights like creating little, circumferences around different venues, being like, if Coachella was going on, I would send them what we called a swipe surge notification that just said like Tinder's blowing up at Coachella, like open Tinder right now. And I would do that for all the large events in the country. That was one example. That, no engineers, and then we ran a similar thing on in dating. The biggest day, kind of like our Black Friday, is always the day after New Year's, because people make their resolutions. They're probably hungover. They're sitting on the couch, and a lot of them want to meet people. And so we did a swipe surge on January 1st. It must have been like 2016, globally, which is pretty scary to do because you're sending 40 million push notifications, which is, if you think about that, just traffic. If you put those people in a football stadium, that'd be like 400 football stadiums. But that ended up being our highest traffic day ever. And then, it got a TechCrunch article, and then the whole company was like, who's this person on the side, like sending these cool push notifications that's, driving our highest traffic days. And then suddenly, like, people started taking me more seriously at Tinder. But I think anytime you enter a new job or a product team specifically, you need to like earn the respect of your teammates. And for me, I didn't have engineers, but I had this little tool that I could mess around with. And I think I became like known on the Tinder team as someone who could do good work just because I was forcing my way into being a person on the team.
Yeah. What's fascinating to hear is you're basically talking about various features that maybe people don't think of as part of the product, right? So when people think of product, they think of like the user experience when somebody's in the product, or they think of kind of what does this product solve for me? But as a product leader, how do you kind of holistically think both about the user experience you're presenting to somebody, kind of the back end and what the product can do, but then things like push notifications, all sorts of prediction algorithms. Just how do you think about product and what makes a good product in today's environment?
Yeah, I think you always have to start with one core product loop that just works. Like for Tinder, it was when we tried to innovate on swiping for 5 or 6 years. It was actually really frustrating as a product person because you were trying to like outdo the swipe. But for us, that core mechanic of just seeing profiles and quickly saying yes or no was so mindless and core to the product that we had a really great foundation to build off of. So you need that like foundation, whatever it is, like that hook or that loop that just keeps people coming back for more. And then, around that, especially for mobile, the hidden secret amongst product people, and most people who are in the industry know this, is push notifications are really your lifeblood. That's your retention tool that keeps people coming back because most people's phones are so crowded with different applications that if you don't have a good way to pull people back in through push notifications, they just won't think to open your app. And so a lot of messaging, the kind of highest retention apps are always messaging because you get the most push notifications generally. But for Tinder specifically, our goal was to get you a match as quickly as possible so we could get you in that messaging loop where you were having a conversation, and that became kind of the driver of retention. But I really think of it as being, you have to have that core product, and then it's all about finding ways to keep people coming back. And I think that comes with pros and cons, because you can lose trust with the user if you're spammy or you're not delivering value through those notifications. But for something like Tinder, which is dating, like people perceive dating as a very high value activity to their lives. And if you miss a push notification or you're slow to respond to someone, that might be your soulmate. And so maybe you just miss like the person you're supposed to spend the next 60 years of your life with, or maybe it's just the person that you want to have a fun weekend with. So it's a pretty high value activity. So we were really lucky to be in dating, which I think is just a fun place to build in.
Yeah. How much of this is like master strokes of genius where you and the rest of the product team sit in a room and you say, oh, we have this amazing idea, like, let's just go implement it and it works, versus it's a much more iterative process and you're just testing so many different things and doubling down on the things that work?
It's a combination of both. I think every product team has to have a few really ambitious projects every year. where you're kind of taking a leap of faith, and whether it's through user interviews or data or just like something in your gut tells you this is what you need to build. You need those big ambitious projects, and most of those projects actually don't end up working, sadly. I think it's why companies do things like A/B testing, and you do try and roll out cheaper versions, so you're not spending 3 or 4 months of engineering time doing those projects. But around all of that is just a ton of A/B tests and experimentation. And a big metric of successful product teams is just your testing velocity. Like, how quickly can you release tests? How do you build that muscle internally? How do you get to significance on your tests? Which for Tinder was very easy because we had such a large user base. If you're a startup, it's hard to run a ton of A/B tests because you don't have users to run those tests with. But it's really a muscle you need to build. And for most startups, you don't actually build that for a couple of years. Like at Tinder, we weren't great at A/B testing until probably 4 or 5 years into the company. And I'm sure there's still room to improve.
Yeah. What about user research in terms of not master stroke of genius, not actual like just we're going to throw things out and test, but actually going and talking to the users and getting specific ideas or feedback from them? How did you guys think about that from a product iteration standpoint at Tinder? And then how do you think about it for startups in general?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, again, like Tinder was such a topical product that you can get your user research in the back of an Uber or at a Sunday brunch, or if you tell people you work at Tinder, they will just start talking for 30 minutes. Like, you don't even have a chance to say a word, and they'll tell you all sorts of stories and they'll give you plenty of product feedback. But we didn't really formalize the user research until, again, like probably 2018 or so, in which Tinder was already 4 or 5 years old. And, I think a lot of the feedback we got at certain times was done kind of by third parties, which it's hard for someone who works in product and thinks they know what they're doing to kind of like trust like third party research. And, someone does like a big user study and they tell you what to build. So I think the most valuable feedback is one-to-one feedback that you get yourself. And the job of a product manager or product team is to really consolidate that feedback and build the right solutions. But I remember there was a point where towards the end of Tinder, I was actually I started a kind of experimentation. Calling it a team is an exaggeration, but I went off and I was like, I want to build an entirely new company within Tinder. And it was the first time, I think, in a couple of years where I literally I identified our highest paying subscribers. And I just asked them if they would do a phone call with me. And I probably did 20 phone calls. And I was like, holy shit, like these people will talk to us still. We're a public company and our users will still talk to us, but it was just a good lesson that people are willing to talk to you. And I think the more you can just have one-on-one conversations like we're having right now with users, as long as you have the right sample set, that to me is the best feedback, way better than anything that a third party could give you in a 100-page printout of what your users want you to build.
Yeah. And what about like gamification in the product? One of the things I think that Tinder really did well was everything from like the super like all the way on down. There were so many features that had monetization kind of woven into them and made it a better experience, but also made revenue for the business. Talk a little bit about just the philosophy behind kind of gamifying some of the Tinder experience that you already knew had product market fit.
Yeah. So, a lot of people refer to Tinder as a game. There were moments internally where we referred to it as a game. I think some people think that's off-putting, but the truth is a lot of people want to use Tinder just to have fun. A lot of people don't even plan to date. They like the game of swiping on people and seeing who likes them. And so we definitely leaned into that. I think a lot of the products we built were products that are already been built for dating, which has a ton of people in gaming move over to dating because it's just a really fun place to build. But super like as an example, or I think Boost is a really fun one. You can use a boost to get more impressions on your profile. And it's kind of when you buy it, there's this crazy animation of lightning bolts flying around the screen. And it does feel like, if you've ever played NBA Jam and you kind of, your player goes on fire, it's, or like Mario Kart, when you get the, I don't know what the icon is, but you start racing around the track a lot faster. And we tried to lean into those playful moments, and we added crazy video game like animations just to let the user know, like, hey, we know this is kind of ridiculous that you're buying a boost to amplify your profile. We don't want this to feel like Google AdWords. Let's have some fun. And I think the more at Tinder that we just realized that people want to have fun with the product. I think a lot of people wanted Tinder to say it was a dating product, or to define its use case. And we were just like, the word association is just fun. And we didn't want to tell users what to use Tinder for. And I think part of that was the gamification and just leaning into the fact that we knew dating is just kind of a crazy thing. And we didn't want to be a serious product, and we never, I don't think we ever got there as a product, which is a good thing.
Yeah. Before we move on to talk about the investing, talk a little bit just about one or two stories, maybe like what was the biggest product improvement you made that moved the numbers in a positive way? And then maybe something you guys tried that you immediately realized, like, wait, we might be tanking the numbers and we probably should shut this experiment off.
Yeah, totally. So I think kind of my defining moment in the big product I built was Tinder Gold, which we had Tinder Plus, which was kind of our entry level subscription package, and Tinder Gold really just moved the business in a hugely impactful way. And the core feature in that was being able to see who likes you before you swipe, which actually was a pretty scary thing to build, because we had these rules of Tinder. And one of the rules was this kind of like double opt-in to swiping. Like, you don't know who likes you, and they don't know who likes you when you're both swiping. But again, back to video games, like, we have these rules that we come up with as product people. And my job on the revenue team was to break the rules a little bit for a subset of users and say, hey, if we let 10% of our users access this feature that kind of breaks the game, will that is that something that they want to pay for? And then two, will that literally just like blow up the ecosystem of Tinder? And in the case of Tinder Gold and seeing who likes you before you swipe, everything was fine. It not only did it increase revenue dramatically, it led to more matches, it created more conversations, it got that engagement loop I talked about was really sticky. And so, but that was just huge, and it was really fun because we were a public company. And so, like, nothing gets a team more excited when you're a public company than seeing your stock price go up. It's just addicting, especially in like the Robinhood era where everyone's checking the stock price. And we can pretend that doesn't exist, but every day, everybody, when you walk in the office, knows what the stock price is, and everybody gets really excited. So when Tinder Gold came out, and it kind of like, it literally like 2x the enterprise value of Tinder, people were just pumped up. Like the mood was always good when we walked in the office. And our team was really proud. It was again, like your internal kind of like respect just keeps going up if you build products like that. And it was just a really fun product to build. I think, some things that were hard to do at Tinder. We always wanted Tinder to be, and a lot of people push this in this direction. I think we want Tinder to be a social product because, obviously like bringing your friends on a Tinder drives growth. It also, I think in the public markets, if you're classified as a social product, it has a higher TAM than a dating product. And so we built this product called Tinder Social, which basically allows you to swipe with friends. And it just didn't, like, dating at its core is kind of a one-to-one activity. And we always try to build like sharing mechanics and all these growth hooks. But in some cases, people view bringing their friends onto Tinder as being competitive. Like, if you go to a bar and you bring a bunch of your cool, attractive friends, maybe that lowers your odds of finding success or finding your soulmate. And so social products were just really hard to build on dating, and that was something we saw with Tinder Social.
All depends on if your friends are attractive or not, I guess. But yes, that makes a lot of sense.
I lived with water polo players when I went to UCLA, and they were 6'4" and way better looking than me. So I had to be like the funny intellectual person on the side who would occasionally like meet my soulmate in that way.
I love it. Let's talk about investing. You're investing at a chapter 1. Talk a little bit just about your investing philosophy, why go focus on this full time, and kind of how you think about the companies that you're looking for.
Yeah, sure. So while I was at Tinder, I was doing a lot of investing, and I launched a big AngelList syndicate. I was one of the larger syndicates just by like backers on the platform. I was getting the really cool companies through just being like a person in tech. So I'd invested in companies like Lyft, Superhuman, Cameo, and the list kind of goes on. But saw myself getting onto really great cap tables, and AngelList has a product that lets you launch a fund within days, and they set up all your back office, legal, compliance. And so I decided just to run an experiment again. I wasn't thinking too deeply about it. I just emailed my backers on AngelList and said, "Hey, I'm starting a fund. Who wants to invest in me?" And I think I had $1 million of commitments within a day, and I was like, "Holy shit! Now I'm managing a fund." And so then I made a deck, and I got more serious about it, and ended up raising about a $10 million fund over the course of 6 months. But was doing this at nights and on the weekends, and really there was a breaking point where I felt like I was doing both product and investing. I was probably like I would give myself like a C+ because I was just so distracted in both directions. And so I needed to make a choice. And for me at that point, I had so much momentum with investing that it just made sense to do it full time. I also got to the point where I have a little bit of ADD. I just enjoy working on different problems during the day, and investing's the perfect job if you have any ADD. And so yeah. And then launching chapter 1, I think launching new funds so tough. It's so noisy right now, and you need to figure out what your hook is. Again, like it's like a product. You need to have something that just like stands out in the marketplace. And for me, I knew I loved working on product. I knew I loved collaborating with founders that way. And I also kept asking founders in kind of those early investments, like, why do you, this was after we started working together. I was like, why did you like let me invest? And they kept saying like, I wanted your help on product. And so I was like, okay, like I've heard that again, like user research, I've heard that enough times where I think that's why people want to work with me. And so I branded the entire fund around being like the product person on your cap table. And so I tell founders, like, I want to be your first phone call if you have any product questions, whether it's you're having like some issue with your A/B testing platform, or you're having like this big existential question around what you want to build, and you just need like a third party to come in and play tiebreaker a little bit. And then I thought to myself, where do people really need help with product? It's before they have product market fit. And so it made sense to be an earlier stage investor. And so we do pre-seed and seed investments, and typically kind of look for teams that have a really unique lens on product. And normally it comes from being like a former VP of product or director of product somewhere, or just a great engineer who has product sensibilities. So I end up working with like a lot of really like nerdy, semi-artistic product people who just like love to talk about this stuff all day long.
Talk a little bit about your thoughts. Like you focus so much on product. I've had people come on the podcast who say maybe not product doesn't matter, but like distribution is everything. And the truth is probably somewhere in between. Like you need a good product and you need good distribution. How do you kind of think of that at the earliest stages, especially pre-seed and into the seed round for companies, especially the ones that you're working with that are very product focused?
Yeah, I've talked with so many people about this topic, and like the prideful product person me says like product is everything. It's all that matters. But as you mentioned, I think distribution, especially right now, is probably more important. And that might go against what kind of the fund thesis is. But the truth is, within your product, like growth and go-to-market are part of the product strategy. And so they're not two different competing areas. if you're building a consumer mobile product, you will get the question of how are you going to get people to download your product? There's millions and millions of apps on the App Store, and people just don't like downloading new apps. So that's a big question on the B2B side. I think there's different unlocks, whether it's, hey, we just got through YC and we have access to 3,000 YC companies. That's a growth unlock. But I'm always looking for different unfair advantages, or especially right now, like I just did a consumer deal and we're just stacking the cap table with TikTok influencers, which sounds funny. And I tweeted about this yesterday, but I was like, which TikTok influencers are actually investing right now? And so we made the choice to not have too many Silicon Valley investors. We want people who have audiences. And so, again, and that's all distribution. We know we have a product that works, but we need eyeballs on that product. And so we're trying to figure out how to get those eyeballs.
Yeah, it's really interesting. As you think through kind of building in the earliest stages, is it something that a pre-seed, a seed company, again, master stroke of genius, just because they don't have enough traffic to really kind of run an iterative process and kind of get feedback? Or do you think that many of these product folks can still kind of run that iterative process, and maybe they don't have tons of traffic, but they can do some things to kind of short circuit learnings and really get the product in a place where it's valuable and finds product market fit?
Yeah. I mean, in consumer especially, you need a little bit of genius. You just do. Like, you need a core nugget or idea that just blows people's minds and gets people to talk about your app enough where it becomes like a Sunday brunch conversation. I just believe in consumer that you need that. That said, there's ways you can run tests if you don't have traffic. And we see a lot of people do this at different accelerators or studios more when they're incubating ideas. Is you can take out $15,000 or $20,000 and run a bunch of smoke tests against different landing pages and product ideas to see what converts and see what people will literally just sign up for. Sometimes you can A/B test products with Medium posts. Like sometimes I'll have an idea and I'll say, hey, I'm building this. And I launch a Medium post, and if nobody responds, then maybe nobody thinks that's a good idea. And if they do, then the only problem is then you have to actually build the product. If you say you're going to build it and people want it, but you can find ways to get traffic. I think you're just trying to see if people will literally sign up for it, and if you have something, hopefully you can have enough traffic to measure retention over a period of 28 days or so. But yeah, I do think it's harder to A/B test as a startup, but don't. Be creative and figure out ways to get that traffic, because you can do it if you have a little budget.
Yeah. You're investing as a solo capitalist. Talk through kind of the thought process of why invest as a solo capitalist. What are the advantages? Maybe what some of the disadvantages are as you've been doing it for a while now.
Yeah, we were talking about this before the show, but I've always invested on my own, and I've just developed a lot of confidence in my picking ability. And so I went through the process this year of like asking myself, do I need to bring on other investors, other GPs? And just in the past year, LPs, limited partners, have become so accepting of solo capitalists where to me, it's an advantage right now, because it's so competitive. And if you can move with a slightly faster speed by being solo, you can win deals. And I led a seed deal this week where I got to them first and I said yes before they could talk to other investors. And if I had a team, I would need to pull in someone else, and it would be this whole process. I think the key is building a support system around you, either through platforms like AngelList or by setting up your own back office where you don't have to worry about the other parts of your job. And so you can just focus entirely on investing. I also think a lot of people, as you have a big kind of online presence. If you have a big online presence and you can raise money, bring on a partner in most cases just doesn't really make sense. If you can raise a fund and get going out unless you find the perfect complement to you. And I've gone through the process of talking to a few folks about partnering, and it just hasn't, back to like dating, like I haven't found my perfect match, but maybe one day somebody will come into my life and I just need to work with them. But until that happens, I'm so happy doing what I'm doing now.
Yeah. How do you think about the balance between like speed of decision making and quality of decision making? This is something I constantly go back and forth on, right? Because when you're a solo capitalist, you definitely have speed, but you don't have those investment committee meetings. You don't have partners that you can kind of bounce ideas off of. How do you, are there things that you do to get feedback or have sounding boards? And then also, how do you just think about the trade-off between speed and quality of decisions?
Yeah, sure. So I think there's two parts of this. One is just this idea of a prepared mind. And so it's doing the work before you have that meeting, or knowing what you're looking for and having seen enough kind of like different versions of an idea. You've gone through the idea maze, and when you see it, you just know, like you're like, I've seen 10 of these companies and there's this slightly different twist where this is actually the company to back. So having a prepared mind is a big part of it. The second part is building your support system in terms of peers and people you invest with. So I invest really often with the same people. I know we're on cap tables together, but I invest with guys like Ryan Hoover, great investors like Lee Jin, Harry Stebbings, Tatum Rahul from Superhuman. So we're always doing deals together. Josh Buckley's another one. And so I'll send deals to those people. Maybe I'll kind of like be around the hoop and thinking about committing, and I just get their reaction. So it's like having an investment committee, but we all have different balance sheets and different funds. And so you get that peer feedback. But I think being an investor can be a really lonely job, as you probably know. And so you need to figure out who your peers are going to be. And a lot of people build peer groups within investing. They try and go really wide. Like they have 100 people who they catch up with every couple months, and it's not a very intimate relationship. But I've kind of just like picked, and it's happened naturally, like 10 people who we just love to bullshit all day long about investing, and we challenge each other, and it's probably what it feels like to have an investment committee.
Yeah. How do you think about follow-on investments in terms of you're investing at the pre-seed and seed? Do you try to save a bunch of capital and kind of invest through the stack? Do you just say, hey, look, I'm going to make a good decision pre-seed and seed, and then I'll just take the dilution later on? What's the strategy or thought process?
Yeah, for me, I have reserves baked into my fund. A lot of people view these smaller funds as being first check funds, and then you kind of spin up SPVs for your winners. I talk to a lot of people who are smarter than me. Mike Maples from Floodgate, Chris Dixon from Andreessen Horowitz, and they all insisted, and they showed me data that suggested having reserves would increase my performance, as long as I could pick the right companies to double down on, which is an entirely different ability. So I have 50% reserves. I'll occasionally do, I'll see a great Series A. Occasionally I didn't invest in the seed. And if I do those, I call my reserves like flexible reserves. So I'll take money out of my reserve bucket and do the deal, even though I didn't invest in the pre-seed or seed. But out of my fund, I think we've invested in 45 companies. I'm looking to deploy reserves into like my top 8 companies. And I don't know, the hard part about investing is I know I'm a pretty good first check picker, but TBD on if I'm if I'm good at reserves and reserves management. And so I'll be curious to see how that plays out.
Are there anything other than just pure returns that you're looking at to see how you'll measure whether you're a good kind of reserve picker or not?
For me, again, I worked on revenue teams. Like I'm very dollar driven. And so, there's no kind of like I'm going for returns, and there's, I don't get kudos for anything else. So, I want to 5X my fund, or, there's some scenario where my fund does really well and becomes kind of a legendary fund. And I want to be those stories where people say, Chris Sacca's first fund was like this because he had Uber. Like everybody wants to have that legendary fund. So that's all I care about. And that's how you stay in the business. If you can't return capital to investors, I'll be out of this game. I'll be back on product teams after fund two. So I'm really, I'm really kind of returns driven. It's hard because you meet great entrepreneurs and maybe your check size isn't big enough that they give you, or maybe you love them, but you just don't see the kind of market potential in what they're doing. And you have to say no all day long, which is the hardest part about this job. And so, yeah, that's kind of how I think about the world.
Makes sense. What are some of the downsides to the solo capitalist model? We talked a little bit, maybe just about kind of being out on an island. Is there anything else that you've noticed as a downside?
Yeah, I think sometimes you can be viewed in the market or as entrepreneurs as being kind of like an angel sized check. So if you start raising a larger fund, maybe you raise, $40 million fund, or even I've seen solo capitalists raise $100 million funds, and you're asking for a $1 million check. And then they have this other fund that has a platform, and they have a platform team, and they have, 10 partners. And it's like, you can imagine how that model to some entrepreneurs, it appears to be a better place to go. And it's just different people view solo capitalists as being, you're either viewed as a fund or you're viewed as an angel. And so those are hard conversations, because I think that right now, again, like if there's a great company, there's going to be dozens of investors trying to get on the cap table. And why are you the person who deserves a 500K check or a 250K check, which once you start going above 250K, it starts to become hard at the pre-seed and seed. You have to convince them that you're either their second or third largest check. And then maybe you make some compromises on quality at that point. And so it's this kind of cat and mouse game of knowing how big your fund should be based on how much power you think you have in the market, and how you're viewed as entrepreneurs or viewed by entrepreneurs.
How has your process changed with the pandemic and kind of the lockdowns? Were you already doing everything remote and it's not a big change? Were you taking a lot of in-person meetings and you had to kind of adjust?
Yeah, it's been all Zoom. I've invested in, I think 40 plus companies this year, and I've met one of the entrepreneurs in person, and it was after I'd invested in them. And that's shocking to some people. Like I was pitching a really well-known institutional LP, and they asked me the same question. I said, I haven't met any of these founders in person. And I could kind of tell, like, based on their reaction, I was like, that wasn't the right answer. But this is the new world we live in. And especially at the pre-seed and seed, it's so fast. People are building products all around the world now. And so, and we're in a pandemic, so there's really no other option. You have to figure out how to evaluate people on video, and a lot of it's social cues, a lot of it's reference checks. But I've just become so comfortable interacting on video, and to me, I don't need to like shake someone's hand and have coffee with them anymore. Of course, I'd love to. I love meeting people in person, but if you do that, you'll probably miss the deal.
Yeah, I tend to agree. You recently posted on Twitter a photo. It was very beautifully taken. I don't know who took it, but it was you with the Golden Gate Bridge behind you and the waves of San Francisco. I'm going to paraphrase, but basically said, look, there's a lot of debate right now on, every other city in the world, but like San Francisco is still beautiful. I took that to be you will still spend a lot of time in San Francisco. What's your general kind of take on Austin, Miami, LA, San Francisco, New York, and wherever else internationally people are considering?
Yeah, so I posted that photo yesterday, and my wife sent me, and I looked at it. I was like, we had a lot of good times in San Francisco. I started my career there. I was born in the Bay Area. I met my wife in San Francisco, and so the Twitter narrative is so bearish on San Francisco, and it's gotten really aggressively anti-San Francisco, and at times I've been a part of that in different ways. Not aggressively, but I've been very open about the fact that I think San Francisco needs to change in different ways. I got a text actually from my mom 2 weeks ago, kind of it was like a mom to son moment, which you still have when you're adult, when you're an adult. And she said, like, why, it's kind of like, why are you speaking so negatively about San Francisco? Which I didn't think it was that negative, but she was like, this is the place where you grew up and it afforded you so many great opportunities. And it was just a good reminder that the city itself and the Bay Area has given me so much. And I was just trying to like create some positivity around San Francisco because a lot of my friends still live there. A lot of my family lives there. And to wake up and see people shitting on your city all day long probably doesn't feel good. And candidly, we might move back to San Francisco at some point because, again, I grew up there and I still think there's so much value in being kind of in the center of it all. I have a couple brothers. I have a large family. One of them just moved to Austin in August. Another one's moving to Miami in March. And so I'm like the brother who's trying to figure out where I belong. And for the moment, I'm in LA, but I think as you've seen, you can build a company anywhere. I think the question is just, can you raise capital in these places? And I more and more think that investors don't care where you are as long as you're building a great company. And so it's the one great thing about the pandemic is I think people have finally just, they're like chasing their like innate desires. It's kind of like this like fantasy world where it's like, where would you live if you could actually live anywhere? Again, this is for people who are lucky enough to be able to do that. But, and you're seeing people live in Hawaii, you're seeing people live all over the place. And, it's a very privileged thing to be able to do, but I'm seeing people who are, they're happier because they're not bound to one city, and it's the quality of life for them has increased in many ways. So it'll be interesting to see how things shake out. I still think there will be some pullback on the San Francisco narrative. People will come back to San Francisco. I just don't know if it's going to be quite the center of gravity that it used to be. And so I think there will be, especially if the city doesn't change in terms of, I'm sure you've seen the debates about Chesa and the district attorney and all the crime. It's not a safe place to live right now. And so until it becomes a safe place, I don't think it will ever return to being the San Francisco we know and love.
Absolutely. Before we move on to anything else, where can people find you or send you deals if they're working on a company that they think could be a good fit?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm JMJ on Twitter, which is a great place to find me. And then, my DMs are open, although Twitter's DM product sucks. But my DMs are open. And then, there's chapter1.com is my website. So you can visit chapter1.com.
Got it. The Twitter DM search works like 20% of the time, 80% of the time it doesn't, but at least they have it now. So like, I guess that's like somewhat of an improvement.
I know. If you want to go viral on Twitter, just complain about Twitter DMs because everybody will like your post and reshare it. It's like the one thing we can all agree on. It's just not a functional product.
I love it. Before we get into the rapid fire questions that I always ask everybody, I pulled some questions from Twitter and we'll kind of go through these. Drew Morris, who I'm assuming has zero relationship to you, wants to know who is your favorite brother?
Oh man, he's my Miami brother. But I grew up in a house with 8 kids. My parents split, but they remarried, and so there's kids everywhere. And Drew's a lawyer. He likes to ask really pointed questions. So honestly, this is going to be like the most PC answer, but I love each brother for different things. Like Drew and I have completely different conversations. We talk about all sorts of stuff. And then my brother in Austin loves investing, Matt. And so I'll call him and we'll just like talk about the craziest investing ideas. I know, Pomp, you have brothers, but I have such different relationships with all my siblings. And yeah, I can't pick one for you. You know that.
He knows, but he's going to ask anyways.
I know.
Liz Keating asked for you to explain your college bedroom / sunroom and explain the impact that it had on your life. Yeah,
sure. So I lived, as I mentioned, with a bunch of water polo players. And then Liz was a swimmer at UCLA and is a great friend of mine. She was also in the house, but we moved in together and there was this sunroom in the back and everybody was picking their bedrooms. And I ran in and I was like, this is my room. I get the sunroom. which I don't think anybody wanted, but I was trying to be, at that time, I thought I was going to become an author. And so I was like, it's this very like poetic place where I had a typewriter in there, and I was just like totally just like in this like fantasy world. I was an English major. And so the sunroom just became like a part of my personality. It was like Jeff's the one in the sunroom. It was kind of just like a weird first choice. But at the time I was always just trying to do like the most hipster emo thing I could do. And it felt like living in the sunroom was like a place to be an author.
That's a great answer. It makes a lot of sense. Dallas Cohen asked, if you could have lunch with anyone who is living, who would you choose?
Yeah, definitely. So my grandpa's 100 years old. His name's Merv Morris. He started Mervin's department stores, which ended up becoming a large public company. And I love talking to my grandpa. It's just like, we can talk about business. I can talk to him about how he was, started his first store. He didn't have any money. He took out a bunch of debt, and how he grew that to becoming just a public company. It's so fun. And then just on a personal level, it's pretty amazing to have a grandparent that's seen that much, who's, been through multiple wars. He was born on the 4th of July. So he's very, he's very patriotic. He's just somebody who I'd love to spend time with. And so he definitely wins that question.
That's a fantastic answer. Jonathan Badine, I think is how you pronounce it. He wants to know what your morning routine is, which tells me he knows something I don't know. So what's he asking for?
So Badine is the inventor of the right swipe, which is his great claim to fame, well deserved. But so when I joined Tinder, I was asked to there's this website called mymorningroutine.com, and they asked me to write an article. And if you read the newsletters, it's people who have these really like prescriptive morning routines. And so I thought at the time I was pretty regimented in my mornings, but I wrote this ridiculous summary of what I do in the mornings, or what I did. And it was like, 6 o'clock, I wake up for yoga, like 7 o'clock, I walk home. I like, listen to my record player for 10 minutes, or it was ridiculous. And looking back on it, I laugh at myself, but it was trying to like summarize my morning routine. And the truth is now my morning routine is completely bonkers. Like during quarantine, I'm just like, you can get an extra hour of sleep if you need it. So I've just decided that I'm not going to pretend to be like the Tim Ferriss of morning routines. And I wake up when I'm ready, and I work a long day, but I'm not going to try and be like the most productive human in the world. And I don't think that's my personality at this point in life.
I love that. And I love that he knows that you've got a great answer to this. That's why he's asking. The last one comes from a pseudonymous account, Stock Market Hats. It was a good question. What is your best and worst investment that you've made?
Yeah, honestly, a lot of my best investments, and I know you're deep in crypto, have been crypto bets. So Compound Finance was a really great one. Of course, Bitcoin's been a great one for so many of your listeners, but I love the quick returns on crypto and how you get liquidity really quickly. It's a really attractive thing. I think a lot of my best investments will still play out on the private side, because I really started investing 5 years ago. And so I invested in a company called Rome Research in March that I'm really excited about. And so we'll see what happens. But in terms of bad bets, I think I've made a ton of them, and it's mostly things that you didn't invest in. But rather than calling out one company, I think it's been when I just invest in things outside of my strike zone. I've talked with Mike Maples a lot about this. It's just like, as an investor, you have to know what you're good at. I think this is true for a lot of parts of life, but self-awareness is a big part of investing. And whenever I've made mistakes, it's just things that I don't know enough about. And so part of becoming a good investor is refining your idea of what your strike zone is and then sticking to it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. I asked the same 3 questions to everyone before we wrap up, and you'll get to ask me one to finish. The first question is a little bit more serious. What's the most important book that you've ever read?
Yeah, for me, it's always Catcher in the Rye is my favorite book. I love Holden Caulfield is this outsider. He has his own mind. It's also the book where in high school I read it and I wanted to write like that. I was like, I want this like stream of consciousness, first person narrative. And I started to write a lot after I read that book. And I became, one of my teachers in high school pulled me aside and he's like, I think you could be a professional writer. And so, and I tried to be a professional writer. I spent 2 years trying to be a screenwriter. And so that book really like led me down this path of trying to communicate better through writing.
Yeah, it's awesome that you get inspiration from the things you consume, right? So I think that's fantastic. Next question is from our friends over at 8 Sleep. They got me asking everyone, what is your sleep routine? And the context here is I did not sleep at all. Like I literally would operate on like 4 or 5 hours. I was flying all over the place and just beating up my body. And in 2020, I told myself, I'm not going to fly anywhere. Like I'm going to chill. Yeah. And then the world conspired to make sure that came true because literally I was locked in my apartment. And I eventually got an 8 Sleep mattress and this like thermoregulation. Now I sleep like a baby. So are you somebody who sleeps a lot, who didn't sleep at all? How's that evolved over time?
Yeah. So I actually developed sleep apnea in high school. When I was 15, I could not fall asleep for the life of me. And I started taking Tylenol PM. Eventually I started taking Ambien. Like it was not good. And then I started to work out a lot more and just that helped a lot. So I was working out, I'd fall asleep better. And then, all the way up to now, I do have an 8 Sleep mattress. So Mateo will be happy that I got the foam pad or the pad that goes on top of your mattress. And that's been just so cool. So my wife has her side of the bed, which she can regulate the temperature. And then I have my side. And then there's no, I sound like an advertisement, but there's no alarm clock because it vibrates your side of the bed. And so my wife doesn't have to wake up and be mad at me when the alarm goes off in the morning. But that's helped a ton. And then, I tried again, like I try to not look at devices before bed, and I'm not a saint. Like I do check my email before bed, and I'm addicted to work. So, but similar to you, I've started to value my sleep a lot more. And I used to sleep 4 or 5 hours a week. I was like cranking, trying to stay up till 2 a.m. And I've just gotten to the point where I've thought more and more of like entrepreneurs and just investors as being more like athletes. Like you have to take care of your mind and your body to make good decisions. And so I try and get 7 or 8 hours of sleep. I still have like really shitty sleep nights, but I think socially the value of sleep has just become such a topic, and it's something I'm paying attention to.
Yeah. I told Mateo that this was going to happen. I said, if I start asking people this, like half the guests are going to be your customers. So it's going to just be us talking about 8 Sleep. The last question I have is more fun. And then you'll get to ask me one. Aliens, are you a believer or a non-believer?
I'm a believer. I when it comes to space, I trust Israel. And if they say there's aliens, I'll just go ahead and say that there's aliens.
So you're what do they say? Galactic Federation was the guy. He said we're all part of a galactic federation, and they just don't want to tell us yet.
I did think so. There was one part of like someone was trying to make Trump unlock all the documentation about aliens before he left the White House, and of course today we have a new president, and we didn't see those documents. So I'm curious if Biden will unlock the documents.
Yeah. My favorite moment over the last 4 years was I remember when everyone was going to storm Area 51 and like 6 people showed up or something. Like there was this whole thing. We're just going to go find it. And if people are like, I don't think that's where they're keeping the information. Like I'm pretty sure the information's somewhere else.
Yeah. I think Elon Musk should just own this topic, and like he should be the one that tells the world if there are aliens or not. I think it would just be like the most viral topic with the most viral person. It would just light the world on fire.
That's a great suggestion. Don't let him hear that because he will definitely try to do it. All right. You can ask me one question to finish up. What do you got for me?
Yeah, Pomp, I'm curious. Obviously we met, I think in 2014 or 2015. And you were exploring crypto and you just made this decision to just go all in, which for me, I think there's a deeper part of that, which is really applicable to many people, which is just like owning something and not giving a shit if people judge you. I'm sure there were people in your life who told you you were insane. I'm sure there were other investors who told you you were an idiot. And I'm sure there were a lot of people in Silicon Valley who wrote you off, but what like freed you to just jump in, and how did you not give a shit, I guess is the question.
Yeah. So I don't think it necessarily was around like investing as much, like, hey, caring what other people thought or not. I had this really unique experience when I was 21 years old, where I was in the military, went to Iraq, and I was there with a bunch of guys that were a little bit older than me. So kind of late 20s, early 30s. I was frankly just a dumb, naive, like very impressionable kid. And when I got there, I had basically been pulled out of college to go. And so I'd been worried about like what was like the party on Friday night. Right. I mean, the same things that everyone's worried about, like, do I have enough money to get some beer and have a good time? And so these guys were worried about like their wives and their kids and their mortgage. And is their job going to take them back when they come home, and like real life kind of adult things. And so that was like this like maturation process that like I had to really accelerate because of, kind of just being around them in the conversation. But the second thing was like, it's war. And so you see both the good and bad sides of that situation. And I think that at that age, like in that moment, what really stuck to me is just like, oh, we're all going to die. Like there's an end to this thing. And so when I came back, there was like a short period of time where I implemented that learning in like a negative way. Like I had a motorcycle, I'd go like 120 miles an hour down the highway, and just like, well, if it happens when I'm 21 or if it happens when I'm 81, like, it's like very quickly, like you kind of get that out of your system. But I think that it really just got me to the point where I really just didn't care, right? It was like, hey, look, like you only have so much time, and like, who cares what anybody else thinks? And so like, that's a hard lesson to learn because you have to go through that specific experience to get that. But I really carried that with me for, ever since really. And so when it came to investing, I think the one thing that I just kept telling myself was like, the thing that seems least likely, but has the most asymmetry is like the area to go focus on. And to me, like when I first started looking at it, I was like, this is insane. Like literally that, like you people are crazy. There is no way that this is going to work. And I remember I sat down with a couple of people and they were like, but if it does, and I was like, good point. Yeah. Like if it does, like this is, one of the largest probably like disruptions, and not, just a Bitcoin thing, but like from an ethos standpoint, from a decentralization, a privacy centric technologies, like all this stuff. And so I just slowly started to do it. So it was never like I sat down and was like, all right, I'm going to just go focus on this. Like it was kind of a slow evolution. And then what I started to realize was as I got better educated about it, I started meeting more people. It was like, oh, like this is real. Right. And I felt like I kind of knew something before other people, and other people would warm up and kind of learn it as they spent more and more time as well. So that was like one advantage. And then the second thing was I was willing to be wrong. And I think that's where it was one thing to like have the opinion like, hey, this is going to be big and let me like go invest capital. But a lot of investors, like they'll invest a lot of crazy stuff, but they don't talk about it. Right. Or they don't want to like go bang the drum publicly and like, talk about a lot of their early stage companies until they know it's going to work. And then it's like, oh yeah, I was early. Right. And so for me, it was just like, if this works, this is going to be really, really disruptive. And I'm willing to like, one, be wrong in public, but also two, I'm willing to learn in public. And so like, I'm going to change my mind. I'm going to like do all this. And I think it was just the expectation setting of like, I may be wrong, but I'm going to like go through this entire journey in public. That gave me the like safety net of if it doesn't work, then I'm like, well, we all learned together. It didn't work. So it almost felt lower risk than I think a lot of people thought it was. But looking back, like, yeah, it was pretty crazy, I guess. And so, it's working, I guess, and that's a good thing. But I still worry that, the more and more that your public reputation becomes tied to something or is like very much intersected, that's great today when it's working. But like, God forbid something negative happens in the future, like there's still risk to some degree. And so you just, I think, got to be smart about, educating people about, hey, here's the risk, do your own research. Like, that's why I talk about that stuff a lot. It's just to clear my conscience of like, hey, I'm doing the work, I'm making my own decisions. You should do the same thing. And if you do that and you decide this is what you want to do, then, all for it. But just make sure you kind of do your own work.
I love that. I love the part about you found something, like there's a hidden secret that you found before other people. And in investing, I think that's what you're looking for. You're looking for hidden secrets, that whether it's emerging communities or behaviors, and you just know before everyone else. And for you personally, you did put yourself out there as an observer, like, and it was very, I think it's very risky to do that in ways, because at that time, maybe you eliminate yourself from getting a GP job at a big venture firm, but you were okay with just going in a different direction with your life. And, as an observer, it's been really fascinating to see.
As you know, when I really started to learn about it, I thought I missed it. Right. Yeah. I was like, oh my God, like, how did I not see this? So that was like one weird thing. And then two, I won't say who it is, because I'm still, pretty friendly with them and they've been incredibly gracious with their time. But like, there's 2 or 3 people that I always keep in the back of my head. Like, I got the messages of like, you're torpedoing your career. Like, what are you doing? And for whatever reason, it's just like, I just followed my gut. And like, that's a horrible kind of theoretical decision-making framework of like, oh, I just followed my gut. But over time, I think people just become more comfortable, especially as you get more mature and kind of more experienced. You just become more comfortable doing that. You can't explain it. But, worked out so far. So we'll see.
I love it. Yeah. My best decisions are always when I follow my gut in investing and in life, but investing. And then my worst decisions are when you have that feeling and you still say yes. And so that's so powerful. And again, like knowing when to follow your gut is something I've learned. It took me 36 years to learn how to do that. I think I'm still learning it.
I have a friend, I'll leave you with this one thing. He used to always say, we're doing irrational things. Why are you trying to be rational? Yeah. Right. Like, kind of just, stop trying to explain it. Stop trying to defend it. It's just like, if you believe in it, do it. So, all right, Jeff, listen, where can we send people? At JMJ on Twitter?
At JMJ on Twitter. You can follow me. I tweet a bunch of crazy things. Don't take anything I say too seriously, but at JMJ on Twitter.
And chapter1.com.
Exactly.
Awesome, man. All right. Well, listen, thank you so much for doing this. We'll definitely have to do it again in the future.
Thanks, Pomp. Appreciate it.